Hey, Frugal Force, this is Captain Frugal reporting for duty, and today I found an article that really hits home and I want to talk about it, and that is from Bounding into Comics. Now, you know I don't do a lot of drama type videos, but this one is one that hits home, and I tend to do them when they hit home. There's something that really matters to me, and this one, of course, is about Captain America, and the article is, if you see here, it says Chuck Dixon reveals Marvel Comics rejected his pitch for an anti-communist Captain America. Notice that. Does that not seem like it fits the character perfectly? But yet it was rejected. Now, this article is written by John F. Trent on October 15, 2020. It was published here. So let's look at this. Prolific Batman writer and creator of Bane, Chuck Dixon recently revealed that Marvel Comics rejected his pitch for an anti-communist Captain America. Now, just for a heads up and for full disclosure, you know I love Captain America and I love Chuck Dixon writing. I loved his Batman work. His Batman work, in my opinion, was just phenomenal. And so here we are, the classic Captain America. I don't know how he can't seamlessly make the transition. Now, I recommend you read this whole article for yourself, but I'm going to spotlight just a couple areas that interest me that I want to talk about. It said Dixon revealed that both he and his Bane co-creator, Graham Nolan, made the pitch in his latest Ask Chuckson video on YouTube. And I suggest that you go there and check out this Ask Chuck Dixon episode number 28. Chuck Dixon does a great thing about Ask Chuck Dixon on YouTube. It's a great way to get interaction between him and the fans. Chuck Dixon seems to be a really, really nice guy. I've reached out to him, and I've talked to him through chats and things like that, especially through Facebook and things like that. And he's always been nothing but a kind professional consistently to me, and I've always really greatly appreciated that. Well, anyway, furthermore, it says Dixon's revolution came in response to a comment from Vic Campley, who wrote the author, the original Captain America comics. Bucky, pre-Silver Age, lived. This is quite interesting to me. He was shot and wounded and written out of the books to add a female partner for Cap. Never did care for the rewrite of the Golden Age events of Captain America at Marvel in the 60s and 70s. And that's a pretty cool thing, a pretty cool way to do it, to have him wounded. You know, they could have still brought him back that way. I think that would have been an interesting story. It might make a great what-if story if you don't, if you hear me, Marvel. Come on, what if there? So Dixon responded, I like Captain America. He made a big impact on me when he suddenly popped up in the Avengers unannounced, because everything in comics back then was unannounced until you got to the newsstand and saw the next issue. And boy, I can relate to that. There was something about that. You didn't have an online thing where you can go and find out what was going to happen in a comic book ahead of time. We didn't have all these spoilers. Not that I hate what's going on now. I think there's great reasoning to have reviews. When comic books are expensive as they are today, we need to be able to, I think, check and see if this is something we're going to want to spend our money on. It's no longer a disposable quick income thing like it used to be, where it didn't cost you a whole lot, and it's like, well, if you didn't like the issue, it didn't really hurt you much in the wallet. Nowadays, you take a big hit. And so this was really, an interesting thing to hear, because I can relate to that, because I remember the days of the old spinner rack. Well, anyway, getting off the subject there, getting back on the topic there, get back on the right road. So anyway, it said it was unannounced, and you can imagine how shocking that was. Just like when you first read, Gwen Stacy dying, how shocking that was. So it said they didn't even hint this was coming. Big secret kept by Marvel from comic book readers everywhere. And there's something to be said about that that's just awesome. And quote, I like especially this short run in the 70s. Gil Kane and John Romita were on the book. There were some awesome S.H.I.E.L.D. based stories with Red Skull and stuff like that he had it. And I agree. Those were really, really fitting stories for the character. Really, really well done. If you have an opportunity to check them out in some form, I suggest that you do that. Dixon then went on to lament on how Marvel portrayed 50s Captain America. He explained, I've always been disappointed in how they treat 50s Cap. And 50s Cap went from fighting Nazis to fighting commies. He made a pretty easy transition there, battling our former Soviet allies, keeping them out of the United States, crushing their conspiracies to end our democracy, and that kind of thing. Makes sense once again. And then quotes, these are also by John Romita, coincidentally, and I kind of like this portrayal. If you look at the artwork, I think his artwork fit the style, especially for the day and time and that they were, when they were released there. It was quite fitting. Marvel stopped publishing superheroes for a few years and brought Cap and Human Torch and Submariner back. and some terrific comics for a very short run. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't know about a lot of these short runs either. The return to superheroes kind of failed with readers because at the time they weren't the big thing in there, right? You know, horror comics, romance, and all that were in the day, and people don't realize superheroes, they sort of went away. They went away the dodo bird, if you will, for a little while, and then they came back later. Different types of comic books tend to pop up in styles like Western comic books and things like that were popular for a while. So Marvel abandoned the superhero plans until Stan Lee resurrected them again in the early 60s. Anyway, in this run, he's Cap. He's fighting commies, Dixon said. Dixon continued, but when they returned in the 70s to this storyline to kind of explain why there was a Cap in the 50s even, though the Cap that we knew, the rebooted Cap we knew, was on ice, literally after escaping the Nazis and Bucky dying and all that stuff. So where did this Captain America and new Bucky suddenly come from? And quote, they wrote a story in which this guy was a mouth-breathing, right-wing character, sort of a stand-in, an allegory for Joe McCarthy in the House on Un-American Activities. And as the usual stories were written without doing any actual research in the communist scare period, the Red Scare period, if you will, and the 1950s Cap is portrayed, right, as a villain. I've always thought that was wrong, Dixon added. You know, and I agree. It's that. You have to slant something some way. I always liked it when characters were more down the center. I always told people that, they go, well, you would be fine if it was a right-wing character or whatever. Not necessarily. I want my characters written more down the center, written good, and allow the reader to think and make evaluations on their own. So he then went on to provide a brief history lesson detailing that the Soviets did indeed try to undermine the United States of America. Quote, and as we know from the Vanilla Papers, it was really wrong because there really were communists here in the United States trying to overthrow our government, seeding sedition. Hollywood types and people in academia, and even people in our government who held actual military rank in KVD in the Soviet Union. They weren't just sympathizers or informers, they were actual spies in the pay for the Kremlin. And it really did happen. And that's an interesting case, once again, of Marvel writers really not doing their research and knowing what they're talking about. And you know, you might go, why does that matter today? Well, look what happens today. We're getting tons of propaganda in today's comic books from these people that have no clue what's going on. And if you even ask them about it in their thoughts, they go berserk. Engeltine from I Love Comics just recently had an altercation on Twitter with a particular comic book writer and just asked them to explain their views and why they have such an opinion. And of course, they can't do it. They could not do it at all, which is just, once again, showing their emotional intelligence, if you will, as well as their actual intelligence. They're just throwing out talking points and things to try to please who they think their audience is, meanwhile cutting off 50% or so of their buying audience. So in quotes, so 50s Caps was right, as we knew from the papers handed over. So once again, bingo, right? In the interest of transparency, the United States government was allowed access, and the United States media, the whole world media, was allowed to access KGB and NKVD papers, providing that many of the things that people were told were just crazy conspiracies looking for communists under the rug kind of things actually were true. Now I want to skip down a little bit here about the pitch. Remember, we were talking about that pitch that Chuck Dixon did. Now, once again, I understand a pitch could have been turned down because of maybe they didn't like the idea of the story, maybe they didn't think it was good enough, but this is Chuck Dixon. Come on now. Chuck Dixon did an amazing Batman run. He's done amazing work throughout, great characterization. You cannot tell me that this guy couldn't write Captain America. So it's that Dixon then detailed he and Graham Nolan's pitch as Captain America miniseries, exploring the character in the 50s. And by the way, if you don't think Chuck Dixon can write a story with the character down the middle and not leaning, read his Robin series when he was doing Robin. Particularly, I forgot what issue number it was. I did a review on it a long time ago about guns. He did a really good job showing both sides of the issue of guns. Absolutely phenomenal, and that's how I like my comics. So anyway, he explained Graham Nolan and I, in the wake of papers, proposed doing a miniseries that would explore this period of the Cap 2.0 in the 50s and basically redeem his character from the 70s portrayal. In other words, correcting the wrongs that Marvel did due to lack of research. And I think you can guess how far that pitch went, which shows you, once again, that Marvel really doesn't care. They just want to propagate their own message. And they're going to do it at their own expense of dollars. They're going to put themselves out of business and really tear everything up just because they allow these people to propagate in a certain way. So while Marvel Comics might have rejected Dixon and Nolan's pitch for anti-communist Captain America, which is surprising, why would they do that? Dixon is still churning out comics left and right, which is true. So if you do like Chuck Dixon's work or want to look into it, definitely check him out on his Patreon. He is constantly doing things and is successful with that. So, and here you see, in fact, the prolific Batman writer has a Patreon account in collaboration with Archaven Comics, where backers can receive digital issues of Dixon's Avalon comics and help support his creation for comics for webtoons. He's doing amazing work. Dixon told Bounding Into Comics that Patreon is committed to produce a lot of creator-owned material for Archaven. And in fact, Vox is unleashing me on a line of comics for print, digital, and webtoons, he added. Now, once again, your thoughts on certain things, that's up to you, okay? But once again, I think you should check out some of his work. I've always loved Chuck Dixon's work, and I think he could be a great writer for Captain America. I would love to see Chuck Dixon on the current Captain America run rather than Ta-Nehisi Coates, because I think he would write the character much, much, much better. Of course, the artwork in that book has been horrendous too, so I don't know what they can do to save that. They need to do something, because Captain America sales are in the toilet. So while you have Captain America sales in the toilet, why would you not take an opportunity to have somebody like Chuck Dixon take a shot at Captain America and bring him back to his glory? Well, that's my thoughts. I want to know your guys' thoughts. What do you think on this? Do you think it was just bullcrap? Do you think his story idea pitch wasn't good? Or do you think it was the traditional, good old Marvel Comics has to lean a certain way, and if you don't lean that way, they're not going to put out that book, which tends to be the way I'm leaning. All right, well, thanks for watching. Subscribe, and make sure you leave a like, subscribe, or if you don't, go ahead and put that thumbs down too. I understand that. I appreciate your time. I really do. Without your guys' support, you're amazing. Like me or not, like what I put out there, you're allowed to put your comments below. I like to have a civil discussion. I really appreciate when you guys do that. Your comments below really mean a lot to me, and your support has been nothing but fantastic. Thank you guys. Until next time, keep it frugal.